have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I'd like to say welcome to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. You know, it's Thursday. It's June 29th, the year of our Lord 2017, and because it's Thursday, that means that this is, in fact, the aftermath. And because it's the aftermath, that's essentially all the shite that I couldn't fit into the Tuesday show, and that for whatever reason I didn't discuss on the Wednesday Sackheads radio show last night. And it also means that we've got some very special stuff coming up for you. One of those is we're going to go someplace new. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a new guest. We're going to have two new guests. I'm not even going to do the intro, all right? I guess you guys expect the intro, but I'm not quite going to do that. I'm going to say tonight in the saloon, we have Dan Butcher, the High Plains Pundit. And to that, I can only say good afternoon, good evening, and good to hear you and see you, Dan. How are you, sir?
Good evening, BZ. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you quite well. As a matter of fact, wow, that was really hot. Let me turn it down just a bit. Try it now, sir.
How does this sound? 1, 2, 3. Is that much better?
Now that sounds great. Well, folks,
awesome, man.
This is new. I have not done this before, and of course the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon is always sort of transmogrifying, shall we say. And so what I'm hoping is that Dan Butcher, the High Plains Pundit, will be in the saloon every Thursday as a regular featured guest. And for those of you who don't know, Dan, I could introduce you. I probably couldn't do it as well as you can. I'm going to try. Dan is very important in the media world because Dan does what I would quantify as about 75,000 things at once. He is an absolute stellar media figure. For example, and I'm probably not going to hit the half of it, you can find Dan on High Plains Pundit. You can find Dan on High Plains Talk Radio. You can find Dan on High Plains TV. You can find Dan on Facebook. You can find Dan on Twitter. Welcome, Dan Butcher, the High Plains Pundit. Please tell me, I'm sure I've left something out. Please.
Well, you left out SHR Media, man.
Oh, my God. Yes. Welcome to the land of Captain Obvious. I got everything else except my own damn network. Holy crap. Boy, I really hope Sean isn't listening right now. Well, I know Clint isn't, but I really hope Sean is not listening right now. Okay, but Dan, other than that massive mistake, did I miss someplace where we can find you?
No, you know what, man? That my little media company is HPP Media. You can find everything by going to the homepage at highplainspundit.com. That'll get you to High Plains Talk Radio. That'll get you to High Plains Pundit TV. You can even hook up with SHR Media from High Plains Pundit. So if you kind of go there, you'll get to everything. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You name it. You can get wherever you want to follow us from highplainspundit.com.
Now, I talked about you. No, I didn't speak directly to you, but I talked about you one time, and I've been a blogger since 2004, and I consider it wonderful, incredible output if I put out maybe a post a day, but I want to be consistent. I want to get out at least one post a day. Sometimes if I'm really over the top, I'll have two. And in just an incredible day, I'll have three. Well, I look at your Facebook. I look at High Plains Pundit. I look at SHRmedia.com. And you pump out the posts with great, prodigious frequency. And you're in radio, and you produce TV, and you also produce other radio shows, if I'm not mistaken. And you answer all the questions for Sean, and you take care of the SHR Media website. Dan, do you sleep? That's all I have. Do you sleep?
I don't. Let me tell you, BZ. It's actually a lot easier than what it looks. I'm very fortunate that on a daily basis. Personally, I write anywhere from 5 to 10 articles myself. I'm very blessed to have a great group of contributors that contribute to High Plains Pundit. I'm also very fortunate to have a lot of great partnerships. We partner with the Texas Tribune here in Texas. We're also a member of Associated Press. There will be some that go boo, but you know what? That's something very unique for a conservative media outlet such as mine to be a member of Associated Press. So that allows us a lot of fortitude as far as content, particularly when we need photos and stuff like that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Of course, High Plains Talk Radio. It is what it is. We have a great lineup of shows. We have I keep the lineup at 25 shows so that they rotate cleanly on an on-demand format. And then, of course, along with that, our great partnership with SHR Media. Well, we do something a little bit different at SHR Media. I will occasionally post some original content at SHR, but we use SHR more as a news aggregator than an original source site. So since SHR Media is a broadcast outlet, in that we do aggregate a lot of news on SHR Media. Obviously, I'll be honest. Sometimes when you're on the site and stuff, folks want to look at stuff while they're listening to shows, and so that gives them a great opportunity to catch up on some stories that they might not see elsewhere. They can go visit the original sites and read up on the stories so that we can bring them to their attention. And so that's what we've done with SHR, is try to use it as site aggregation. And of course, I will post some original content from High Plains Pundit, just like you do when you cross post some original content from your own website.
I wanted to make sure that I had you on tonight, and that I attempt, if I say nice, kind, soothing words, to get you on every Thursday, because you have a great insight. You've been in the business for a long time. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was in radio myself, but you have been at it consistently much longer than I have, so you have great insight into media itself. You have insight into how the media works, how it functions, and all the various elements that it takes to assemble good radio, good TV, a good newspaper. Well, here's the other thing. Are you not an editor at a newspaper there in Texas?
Well, we actually, as part of our media company, we do have two newspapers, as well as several local websites. But basically, we sit back and we let the editors control all of that. We're invested in those, but I have going back to it, I actually started in this business when I was in high school, way back in 1983 is when I got my first taste of journalism.
Perfect.
And I've been doing it ever since. And I actually got into new media, if you want to call it that. Of course, now it's just media, and we can talk about that because I personally believe there's no longer such a thing as just newspapers. There's no such thing as just TV outlets and such. People are media companies now and have very, very different sources and different avenues and different products that they do as part of their media company. High Plains Pundit is an example of that. We have High Plains Talk Radio. We have High Plains Pundit TV as part of that. But I actually started out in this format back in 2009. And I was kind of a latecomer to blogging. I started out with just a simple blog on Blogspot, which is owned by Google.
Right.
And my very first day, I had 59 readers. I thought, woohoo, I made it,
You beat me.
And I started out, I was in the newspaper business. I've worked for CNHI. I've worked for Hearst. I've worked for Gannett. I have worked for Morse Communications, at various newspapers and stuff here around the state of Texas. And in 2009, that's when the big newspaper collapse took place. And there was a lot of us that were, quite honestly, our positions were eliminated, downsized. We were told goodbye.
Well,
as part of that.
Along with everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
2008 and the crash.
Yeah. And so I came to my wife. I was going to take a couple of weeks and decide what I was going to do. And a couple of weeks, I came to her and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to start something new. I'm going to start blogging. I'm going to start podcasting. And my wife was like, hey, that is great. That sounds fantastic. Now I have two questions for you. What are blogging and what are podcasting? and to make a long story short, I'm an old radio guy too. I did FM radio. Back when I started doing radio, we were actually still playing 45s. We were still doing our advertising on reel-to-reel tapes. Those were back in the days. If you had to go to the bathroom, you played one of two songs. You played the extended versions of Freebird or Stairway to Heaven. And quite honestly, if you had to go 1 and 2, you played them back to back. So
here's how I date myself. When I used to have to do that same thing, yes, I'm very familiar with those, I would play Inagata Davida. That dates me terribly. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But, we started, make a long story short, we started the original High Plains Pundit in 2009. We've grown from those original 59 readers to we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 million page views a month now.
Holy crap.
High Plains Talk Radio is somewhere in the neighborhood of we've gone over the 1 million listener mark 2 or 3 times. Most of the time, we average somewhere around 750,000 listeners a month. So to all of our programs. So it's built up very nicely. We're very proud of what we do. We make no bets about it. We're a conservative media outlet. We don't hide that fact, but we do distinguish the difference. We do a lot of hardcore news, a lot of hardcore reporting on all sides of the issues. I think many people that know me enough that have listened to my own program over the years know that I'm neither a Republican or a Democrat. I am what I call an American. And if you want to label me, I do what I guess you would call classic liberalism, which would be considered conservatism today. That is what I do, and that's my philosophy and my beliefs on different things. But my thing is just be honest. Be honest in what you're doing. Put the facts, put the figures out there, do the reporting, and you know what? If you make a mistake, own up to it.
Oh, my. That's a story for another time. Holy crap. Well, anyway, we're talking, folks, to Dan Butcher. He is the High Plains Pundit. You are out of Texas, and which town or city are you in?
I am smack dab in the middle of Interstate 40. I live in the Texas Panhandle. I live in the Amarillo, Texas metro area.
Okay.
And if you're familiar with the area, this is where Peladero Canyon is. Kind of this type of area. It's the second largest canyon in the country, behind, of course, that thing they've got across the country going to California. You know, that big hole in the ground,
right.
The Grand Canyon. But we live in a very beautiful part of the country, in the Panhandle, fiercely independent. It's probably the most conservative area in the state of Texas, voting wise and policy wise, etc. Of course, probably we have a very I can count on one hand how many Democrats hold office in our local and county seats here. There's that type of area.
Yes.
That I live in. But it's I've lived here all my life, very proud of the area, and it's made me who I am today. I laugh and joke sometimes. You know, when I go on the radio, I don't know why people come and listen to my own show. I don't ask God any questions. I just do, because I have a very strong Texas accent. I'm very noted. One of the very funny things on my own show is I'm very noted for mispronouncing names. It'll take me sometimes 2 or 3 times to pronounce them correctly, because a lot of times I'm doing stuff off the cuff, so I don't rehearse the names beforehand. But when I have guests, I do make sure that I have those down pat.
Well, hey, BZ is interesting to pronounce. Besides, I like accents anyway, as you can clearly see. But the reason I wanted to have you on, and the reason that I wanted to see if I could get you to be a standard weekly contributor, is SHR is changing. And as of July 2nd and July 3rd, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be changing at SHR. So I think it's a wonderful thing that we're linked to someone such as yourself, who brings a lot of strong, incredible content. We're linked to you. The radio is changing. We're going to YouTube. Almost all the new hosts are going to YouTube. I mean, things are changing quite a bit. So I have to say, number one, thank you for coming on tonight. And number two, it's an honor to have you on here, and I hope to have you and your contributions every Thursday night. But I wanted to speak sort of an intro kind of thing, the very first show that we talk about. In terms of your background, people would think that I'm a registered Republican. I'm actually an independent. I'm a conservative with some libertarianism thrown in as well. I guess you'd say I'm a small L libertarian, because I'm not an open borders guy, and I'm not a smoke all the dope you can or want kind of guy. But I do have some serious libertarian bents to me, so to speak. And the reason I wanted to have you on is because you have some great insight, you have some great media history, and I hope that we continue with this, because I'm gonna sort of use you as insight to your portion of the playground, so to speak. So with that said, I have to ask you, because of your lengthy history in media, what the hell is going on with media today?
Oh, you know what? Here's the thing, BZ, and we could do a whole show on this.
Oh yeah,
quite honestly, we could. And so I'm going to try to keep it brief. And if you run me over past and you need to, you feel free to do that. But because I want to make sure you get a good answer to this. But there's a lot of changes taking place in me. I think you're very aware of that.
Yes.
And I will argue, and I will throw this out here for starters. If you've got a show like what you're doing, BZ, and everything that you do with your own blog and stuff like that, you're a member of the media. You don't have to have formal training. Now, granted, I went to school and got a degree in mass communications, etc.
Yes, I did too.
And when I entered the military many years ago out of high school, my dream was to be a reporter for Stars and Stripes. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a military reporter, be on the front lines, be right in the middle of everything. And but that that's not the way my career path ended up taking me. But bottom line is that when we've got stuff happening today, and people, and I know Donald Trump has had a lot to do with this, but what you're seeing is, especially with the turn, and I was one of the ones that was real outspoken about this, and I knew we were going to see this because, for the last 8 years, all you saw, especially from the liberal media, and we'll call it the liberal legacy progressive media, was all they did was cover for Barack Obama. They were his biggest cheerleaders. They didn't ever go into depth and investigate anything that he did. Now, those of us on the right, we certainly did that. Those of us in conservative media, we investigated, we looked into different things, whether it was Benghazi, Fast and Furious, we were in the middle of it. But I did the same thing when I was a reporter during the George W. Bush years. I've told everybody, and everybody knows that if you listen to me on the air, I was harder on George W. Bush than I ever was on Barack Obama, because George W. Bush was supposed to represent some of my values. So I tended to, question a lot more. But BZ, as long as I've been involved in this business, and I have certainly never seen a turn. A hatred. I mean, it's just a pure hatred.
It is. For
a president of the United States, like we're seeing from the leftist media, than they have for Donald Trump. And now I will use the incident that took place earlier today between the two hosts from Morning Joe,
right,
and Donald Trump. Now,
you beat me to it.
I think Donald Trump had every right to respond to the criticism. Now, I do have an issue with some of the remarks that Trump made. I think he could have done better. But you know what? That's Donald Trump. That's the way he's going to do things. And people that are surprised by Donald Trump, you really didn't pay attention to him before he entered politics, and you didn't pay attention to him while he was running for president, because he hasn't changed one damn bit. He's still doing the same things. And that is what you were going to get with Donald Trump as president of the United States. That's why people love him. That's why people hate him. But the left, and I don't remember, anybody on the right. Now we have radicals. We have lunatics on the far right. We have lunatics on the far left. But we never saw during Barack Obama's presidency the type of nonsense, the type of violence that we're seeing now. These folks, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's Antifa, the various offshoots, La Raza, folks, you definitely had some conservative groups come up, the Tea Party, different grassroots movements like that, but these were not organizations calling for the overthrow of the government, calling for the Constitution of the United States to be done away with. And that is what you're seeing with these leftist groups. And certainly with the hatred and just pure, I mean, you have members of the media, members of the leftist media, openly calling for harm to come to the President of the United States. You have leftists in Hollywood openly calling for the assassination of Donald Trump. Most recently, Johnny Depp made those type of comments. Of course, everybody's familiar with Madonna and some of the other folks that have made this. What we saw with Kathy Griffin, et cetera, et cetera. But BZ, it's just the pure hatred that we're seeing from these folks. I have never seen. Now, granted, we did a lot of investigations, and I'm not one that carries the water for Trump at all. I was not a Donald Trump guy.
Neither was
the
I.
Election. I was a Ted Cruz guy.
I was fist bumps for you right there. I was a Ted Cruz guy as well.
I was a Ted Cruz guy, but you know what? Trump won the primary. He was elected president, pulled off the biggest upset in presidential politics in the history of this country. And but what has happened is you're seeing for the first time, and the people of the United States are really getting a good look because, in the past, the media, the leftist media, those of us in conservative media, we expose this stuff, whether it's lunatics on the left, lunatics on the right. I know Fox News uses the fair and balanced nonsense. But, those of us in conservative media, for the most part, we are fair and balanced, reporting on both sides of the issues. Whether Donald Trump is doing something good, doing something bad. I have seen a lot of the reporting from conservative media today. I have seen lots of very warranted criticism of the remarks that Donald Trump made about the host of Morning Joe, but I also saw the second side of that story saying, you know what? Donald Trump needs to take up for himself too, because these folks are wacko. These folks are openly calling, members of the leftist media, openly calling for the overthrow of the President of the United States and for the overthrow of the federal government, for the Constitution to be rewritten. How you put it, man? It's flat out scary sometimes. That we never saw this. I was one of these people that embedded myself in the Occupy movement when the Occupy movement was really big. But we didn't even see this amount of violence, this amount of pure hatred that we're seeing today. These groups that we're dealing with on the left, whether it's very, very scary. You folks need to be very aware. Very, very scary situation that we see developing with some of these. And BZ, to be quite honest with you, there are folks in the leftist media that are their biggest cheerleaders. They're promoting these folks. They're covering for them. But one thing for sure is that for the first time in a long time, we're being able to expose this because they haven't been able, because they're more emboldened. You know what I'm saying? They think that they can get away with this stuff, and now because the liberal media has also been exposed as being in bed with these folks, it's a lot harder for them to cover up certain aspects of the brutality and and just how radical these folks really are. And when you see that coming out in the leftist media, like what we're seeing, and just the attacks, I'll use this real quick because I know you got to go to a break here in a minute. I'll use what we're seeing in the White House press corps as a great example. We have several members of the White House press corps that have become big celebrities all of a sudden. And I posted some remarks last night in the chat room from a gentleman that has become the latest celebrity because he quote unquote stood up for the rights of the press. He's not going to be bullied anymore. This guy was almost starting to cry.
It's theater.
He felt that he was being bullied by the administration.
It's theater. I call it theater of the absurd. It's
exactly.
It's like going to kabuki theater. And one of the reasons that Trump put a stop to that is because all these guys were doing in TV when the cameras were on them is preening and having theater staged in a White House press corps. It's a stage. It's fake. It's fake news and it's fake umbrage.
You know what? I have no qualms. I think the role of the press is to be a check and balances. Okay, our job is to if we see something, we need to investigate it. We need to get down to the bottom of the story, and we need to keep pressing until we do. But there is a line there when you have an agenda. when you have an agenda, and the agenda that we're seeing with a lot of whether it's NBC, whether it's ABC, whether it's CBS, in particularly CNN is at the top of the list here. When I posted an article on SHR, and I'm going to give these to you real quick before you go to break. Hold on, let me pull this up because I want you to have these real quick, having to do with how obsessed TV news is with the probe into whether Russia tried to influence the 2016 presidential election. Right. This was the focus of Trump coverage from May 17th to June 20th. Russia, Comey investigation got 353 minutes. Climate change 47, fighting terrorism 29, Obamacare repeal and replace 17, economy 5 minutes, unveiling new Cuba policy 5 minutes, tax reform got below 1 minute, infrastructure spending 3 minutes. I think you get the gist.
Yes.
They are completely obsessed with this because they think they're like sharks in the water. They think they're smelling blood, but here's the thing. In that 353 minutes of coverage, they did not expose one damn connection, one damn thing that implicated Donald Trump as to being in bed with the Russians trying to influence the election. One thing that did come to light was the fact that Barack Obama and the Obama administration did absolutely nothing to stop the Russian interference into the election. And were the Russians trying to influence the outcome? No. But what they really were doing, they were testing the waters to see if they could cause a little bit of panic, could cause a little bit of this, a little bit of that, make people stop and think. And they certainly accomplished that. And the Obama administration did not do a damn thing to stop it.
No, they didn't. I'll tell you what, I got another question. Can you hold on for about another 5 minutes after the break? Because I have a final question for you.
I sure can.
Okay. Folks, we are talking to Dan Butcher. He is the High Plains Pundit. Come here every Thursday. You're going to hear Dan at the beginning of the show, and I thank him for that ever so kindly. We're going to come right back with Dan Butcher after the break.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men who emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Cap was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome back to the Aftermath. It's Thursday, June 29th, the year of our Lord 2017, and you're in the saloon tonight with Dan Butcher, the High Plains Pundit. I hope to have him back every Thursday and have his insight contributed to the show. We are still talking to Dan. Dan, I got to ask you a final question, and I'd like to go over this story because once I saw this, I noticed this is something that not very many people are covering. And as a matter of fact, this came from you. Here's the headline: Potential conflict of interest for acting FBI chief. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley is asking the Justice Department to address more revelations of potential conflicts in the FBI's handling of recent politically charged investigations. Grassley's request follows news reports that the acting director engaged in a political campaign and is the subject of an ongoing sex discrimination complaint supported by former Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. In a letter to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, Grassley outlined the various investigations into acting director, FBI Director Andrew McCabe, and any potential conflicts of interest resulting from his role in the FBI probes. But Dan Butcher, this isn't the first time he's been dirty in concert with James Comey. And the reason I read that is because that shows, number one, the content of HP Pundit, of the High Plains Pundit, and the stuff that you write. And number two, nobody else seems to be covering this, sir.
Well, here's the thing, and here is the main connection between here's where the conflict of interest comes into play. Is the fact that when McCabe, there's a lot of speculation that McCabe inappropriately engaged in political campaign activity during his wife's bid to be a Virginia state senator.
Yep.
And McCabe's wife's campaign, are you ready for this, folks? Received nearly $700,000.
Yes.
Almost, we're talking some serious money here, especially for a state race in Virginia to be a state senator. Most campaigns don't even have that much in those type of races, but nearly $700,000 from close allies of guess who? Are you ready for this, folks?
Oh, I know.
Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
and the connections are always too close. With Hillary Clinton, with different investigations here and there, there's certainly. I'm not one of these folks that's going to subscribe to the fact that there was a shadow government left in place by the Obama administration, but there was certainly a lot of landmines laid by the Obama administration.
No, I wouldn't call it a shadow government
for the new president.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a shadow government. It's just the people that were already in place for the past 8 years. But there's another aspect to this that I mentioned that makes, to me, and thank you for pointing this out, makes McCabe complicit, is the fact that with the information that you just gave, with the relationship to the Democrats and his wife and to the Virginia governor, McAuliffe, that's when, I hope you're sitting down, that's when FBI Director James Comey said to his good buddy McCabe, oh, by the way, I find there to be absolutely no conflict of interest here, nothing to see. This is not the conflict you're looking for. Move on.
Exactly, and I think we're pretty well. And I am under the impression that as we continue to probe into this and we continue to look into this, that this is my thing. I think a lot of the coverage that we see pertaining to Russia and any connections between Donald Trump and Vlad Putin, I think a lot of that are cover stories. I think a lot of that is being fed because usually when we get down to it, there's nothing there, absolutely nothing there. And I think a lot of those stories are being fed, and certainly the liberal media, the dinosaur media, the progressive media, whatever you want to call them, they're jumping all over those stories, hoping and praying that there is a connection.
Exactly.
But I think those type of stories, particularly with the numbers I was giving about the coverage of the Russia probe, and any investigations, every time somebody sniffles or even blinks the wrong way about Russia, it's front page news. But these type of stories that we're talking about, conflicts of interest, potential members of the federal government that are loyal to Barack Obama, trying to, leaking information, trying to stop the Trump administration's agenda, trying to protect Barack Obama's agenda at all cost. A lot of those serious stories kind of fall under the radar in the liberal media because they're so entrenched with Russia and trying to find some way to bring Donald Trump down, and there's not anything there. And then we get to the real thing, and people forget that we're still looking. The State Department has launched an investigation that could cause Hillary Clinton and all her staff members their security clearances. I was amazed at the amount of people that were surprised that Hillary Clinton still had security clearances. Yes, she does.
Yes,
and it's very
she does.
important that those get taken away from her. And so a lot of these stories that we continue to cover, that you talk about on your show, that we write about and cover, High Plains Pundit, SHR Media, as well as The Blaze, as well as The Daily Caller, Hot Air, you name it, all the great conservative media outlets out there. We're the ones that are doing the hardcore investigating, the hardcore reporting, trying to get down to stuff. And here's the thing, too. We're not going to shy away from actual stories involving Donald Trump. If there's something there, the Russian connection, we'll look into it. We'll try to find it. But like you were talking about earlier, important stories like this that are real serious, conflicts of interest, they're flying under the radar because a lot of the media are just refusing to cover it.
There is an agenda. There is a clear agenda. Now,
Yes.
all next Tuesday on my show, I'm going to go in depth with regard to CNN and whatnot. But I say it's all they are used to having and sitting in the catbird seat for the past 8 years, and now they're getting pushback. And what is happening is this. They're becoming desperate and frustrated. And it's because of these three reasons. They're losing power, control, and money. And like a person that's out in the ocean that's drowning, you give them a life preserver, or you go out there yourself to try to rescue you, they'll attempt to take you down and kill you with them. And it's no more important than that. They're not on November 9th. The Democrats are not on November 9th. What I call the American media maggots are not on November 9th. You are doing the work, just as I say on my blog. I'm doing the job the American media maggots won't. You're doing the job. SHR's doing the job. That's why I want to have you on the show.
Exactly, man.
Well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it, folks. We have been listening to Dan Butcher. He is the High Plains Pundit, live and direct from Texas. Dan, once again, thank you ever so kindly for coming on tonight and giving us some background. I hope to hear you next Thursday.
BZ, I will be back at the saloon, bellying up to the bar and ready to go, buddy.
Thank you ever so kindly. Greatly appreciate it. Folks, that was Dan Butcher, the High Plains Pundit of High Plains Pundit Everything, basically. Let me see. Time to turn down the microphone because things get really hot when Skype goes away. Dan has a great insight, a great background, a great history. That's why I want to have him on every Thursday night. Now, here's the deal. What I also mentioned is the fact that SHR is changing, and obviously for the better. Things are becoming more competitive all around the nation, in news, in streaming radio, all over the place. The challenges are massive because there is, I exist to be pushback, so to speak, and my blog says the exact same thing. It's my job, and SHR's job, and Dan's job to push back on all the crap that's being foisted upon the American public under the guise of news. Fake news. There's fake news. There's fake law. I wanted to have Dan on because Dan provides an excellent insight, and I wanted to introduce him to everybody in SHR, everybody that listens to SHR. He's got a great perspective, and that's why I wanted to have him on. Also, coming on later, at the top of the hour, 9 o'clock my time, midnight on the East Coast, and 17:23 and 175 seconds in Bolivia, we will have Melanie Collette on. She's also a member of the SHR Media Network, and I want people to get familiar with Melanie as well, to know about her background, her show, what she specializes in. So, at the top of the hour, we're going to be talking to Melanie Collette. I can't wait. I think it's going to be a great, grand time. One final thing that was in the article today about McCabe that Dan had written under High Plains Pundit. The conflict is clear. The conflict is ongoing. Dan wrote, McCabe is also reportedly the subject of an equal employment opportunity complaint for alleged gender discrimination dating back to 2014. Here's the link. Here's the conflict. In that case, Michael Flynn, reportedly submitted a letter of support on behalf of a female FBI agent who reported the discrimination. Despite Flynn's role in the open complaint against McCabe, McCabe still worked on the FBI's investigation into Flynn's communications with Russian officials. Conflict. His wife's conflict. $700,000. Democrats, Hillary Clinton, James Comey saying that's all well and good. There's nothing here. There is no conflict whatsoever. That's why we're going to keep on all of this stuff. I'm not giving up. No one else is giving up. SHR is pushback. SHR is where you're going to find all the good stuff that you need to discover. And, of course, we're going to be at Freedom Fest. Like I say, Melanie Collette at the top of the hour. One other thing that I wanted to talk to folks about is Seattle. There's a lot of stuff going on with Seattle these days. I'm going to get into it a little bit later, probably on Tuesday, in concert with CNN. But Seattle's having an issue with the minimum wage. You'll hear about that later. Seattle also had a gun tax. and they enacted it so that there would be less crime, correct? Because if Seattle enacts a gun tax, then logically that would mean that there will be less crime. Is that correct or not?
And a judge upholds Seattle's so-called gun violence tax, the measure adding $25 to the price of each firearm sold in the city, plus 2 or 5 cents per round of ammunition. The Second Amendment Foundation promises an appeal. Founder Alan Gottlieb says, quote, "It is unconscionable for Mayor Ed Murray and the city council to codify what amounts to social bigotry against firearms retailers and their customers." Joining us now is Tucker Carlson, editor of the Daily Caller, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, and of course Fox News contributor. Tucker, great to see you.
Hey, good morning, Abby.
So we heard social bigotry there from Alan Gottlieb. Is that something you would agree with?
Well, I think it's just dumb. I mean, there's no social scientist or criminologist in the world who would say this is going to reduce gun violence. It's a tax against all gun buyers and gun retailers when anyone who studies it knows a very small group of people is responsible for the overwhelming majority of gun violence in the country. But even from an epidemiological point of view, it doesn't make sense. Consider car accidents, which kill about 3 times more people than gun murders do. Would it make sense to increase the tax on car sales or require a background check to buy one or ban private sales of vehicles or to limit the number of gallons of gasoline you could put in your car? Of course not.
Well, yes, it would if you're a leftist, because if you remember, one of the answers that people in the European Union were saying with regard to Muslims, and specifically Muslims driving into crowds and killing people, was to limit vehicles into cities. That's insanity. Now, this video, this is interesting, and the reason I'm playing this video is because obviously it's Tucker Carlson, and I enjoy listening to what he has to say. But this is just after the tax occurred in 2015. Now, we're going to hear him weigh in a little bit later after the tax occurred, because Seattle is saying, oh, with the gun tax up, there's going to be fewer guns on the street and crime will go down, right? Because if you're an emo leftist, that's how you think.
You look at the populations that are most likely to cause car accidents. You look at drunk driving. You look at young drivers. I mean, this is not actually an answer to gun violence. It's a way of disarming law-abiding citizens, obviously, and they're not even pretending otherwise. They can't explain how this is going to make Seattle safer. It won't, and they know it.
Well,
and it's because all leftists have is the emotive argument. It's not even an argument. It's an attempted tug on your heartstrings if you're stupid enough to allow that to occur.
What the city is arguing is this raise in taxes is going to raise, about $500,000 they're going to put towards offsetting the cost of gun violence. And just to give people a sense, the direct medical costs of treating about 250 gunshot victims last year in Seattle totaled more than $17 million. Taxpayers ended up paying for more than $12 million of that. So do they have a point here in saying, look, the tax is going to come from somewhere. We might as well make those that are buying guns pay for that?
Well, it's ludicrous. I mean, I don't know. What's the cost?
Hello. Unintended consequences, table for one, or unintended consequences, table for the population of Seattle.
Cost of treating AIDS in Seattle. We're going to, tax everyone who uses intravenous drugs or perform certain kinds of sex acts. I mean, it's insane. First of all, you don't ever blame the tool. You take a look at the person who commits the crime using the tool.
Oh, no, not if you're a leftist. No. It's got to be the tool, because that you can readily proscribe. You can't and shouldn't proscribe people.
And you consider his motive in a way, in a way that's useful to stopping him from doing it again. Your house falls down, you don't ban hammer sales because it was constructed with hammers and nails, right? I mean, again, there's no actual scientific justification for this. And that's puzzling, given that the left is forever lecturing the rest of us about science and how the right doesn't believe in science or gravity or photosynthesis or global warming or whatever. And yet, time after time, their gun control proposals are not rooted in social science. And by the way, there's a lot of it. I wrote a book on this once. There's a lot of study that has been done on this question, longitudinal studies over decades about why people commit gun violence, and they don't make reference to any of it. It's just guns are bad. I mean, it's overwhelmingly emotional and therefore not useful. And by the way, it's fine.
It's Overwhelmingly emotional and therefore not useful. Thank you. Correct.
It's emotional. It is emotional. Yes. And Tucker, there are a lot of people, of course, that are wanting more gun reform. So you wonder if this is going to be an experiment in Seattle that plays out elsewhere around the country. But Tucker Carlson, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
At 28 past the hour, the White House facing strong criticism.
Yeah, enough of you. But here's the article from Breitbart.com, because now there were consequences that were documented from this. The headline, Seattle gun tax failure, firearm sales plummet, violence spikes after law passes. When the city of Seattle passed a tax on all gun sales and ammunition as well, of course, the measure was hailed as a way to defray the rising costs of gun violence. But since the tax took effect, those costs have only risen as gun violence in the city has surged. And the tax has apparently brought in much less than city leaders projected it would. Again, if you're a logical thinking human being, can you say that you did not see this coming? And the answer is yes. Leftists did not see that coming. How much data do you need? Asked Dave Workman, senior editor of thegunmag.com and member of the Second Amendment Foundation. The data says the law has failed to prevent what they promised it would prevent. Okay, all right. So, come on. Let's be honest, because the leftists, they certainly won't. First and foremost, this is another leftist assault on the Second Amendment, which leftists despise, along with other aspects of the Bill of Rights as well, to include the First Amendment. So this was how it was portrayed in 2015 with Tucker Carlson. And that's what I had played for you right there. But where's the violence? The violence, as we've discussed, is on behalf of the leftists. And you have to look and examine all the host of violent events that have been occurring in American universities this year and last year, where speakers were threatened. They were actually struck, either physically removed or had their presentations absolutely canceled because of other leftist violence and whatnot. This was Berkeley.
We have the right to defend ourselves. And so this, shutting down Milo Yiannopoulos and doing whatever is necessary to do that, is our right to self-defense.
Shutting down your free speech is a right to self-defense. Perfect. Now, perhaps you're asking yourself, BZ, what's the connection? What's the nexus here? Why? All of a sudden, were you talking about Seattle and the gun tax and the Second Amendment, and now you're talking about violence here? That's because this is an issue of freedom of speech. This is what the leftists think is wonderful.
It's
violence.
Just absolutely horrific what's going on. It's horrible. It's disgusting what's going on right now. And it's one thing to protest someone's right to come here and speak, but it's another thing to create this much amount of destruction and violence and hurt and harm to other people.
So you know what that nexus is.
I just came to see if I could get into the Milo event. I support free speech. It's Sprout Plaza, sort of birthplace of campus free speech. So I decided to come to see if I could get in, see what he had to say, and see the marketplace of free speech ideas come about. And it just got shut down by a bunch of people in black bloc, protester masks.
And those are the people, that's why this is rather glorious. Those are the people that are in masks, that don't want to be identified at all. They call themselves Antifa, and they are absolute anarchists. Now, I said that I had more of Tucker Carlson, and I do. I might play that a little bit later. We're at the top of the hour. We're going to go and hit a break, and then we're going to have Melanie Collette on, who's a member of the SHR Media Network, and we're going to talk about her show and why you, as a matter of fact, need to listen to her show, because she's got excellent insight of a different nature that's important to hear. Come right back.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, and despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
Right after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying kafir is stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
The bloviating Zeppelin. He's big-footed enough radio shows to last a lifetime, courtesy of Sean, Clint, Ken, and Jersey Joe. Now it's time for him to waddle on his own 2 feet via the glorious SHR Media. Gird thy loins for the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, coming soon to ossicles near you. Excelsior.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And, of course, we're back. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. You are live and direct in the saloon. We're in the SHR Media Network studios. We're maybe 2 miles or so from the actual Bill Mill, the belly of the beast, in leftist central Fornicalia. And I'm broadcasting live and direct to you here behind enemy lines in occupied Fornicalia. And, of course, as I want to say, we are doing the job the American media maggots won't, because that's why you tune in to us. You expect that that's going to be coming. We're going to be having Melanie Collette come in, and she should be speaking to us at the top of the hour. We were talking about gun control. We were talking about gun taxes on guns in the city of Seattle, Washington. We heard from Tucker Carlson, who weighed in as that right after that tax was levied. And then there were some unintended consequences that were occurring that leftists purposely, I submit, did not, I don't think they can C. Now, let's listen to Tucker Carlson speak to a gun, an anti-gun activist, shall we say. And let's listen to the tete-a-tete between the two of them, if we shall.
Council of Seattle passed what it called a gun violence tax. The tax imposed a $25 levy on every gun purchased in the city, along with a 5-cent tax on every individual round of ammunition. It worked in one way. A lot of gun sellers have fled the city for the suburbs. People lost their jobs. Did it work? In the intended way. It was designed to make Seattle safer.
Tell you what, folks, we just had Melanie call in. And let's put Tucker Carlson aside for a moment, shall we? Let's put Tucker Carlson to bed, just as the sackheads attempt to put sleeplessness to bed, shall we say. On the line, just to make sure, do I have Melanie Collette of Money Talk with Melanie?
This is she.
Hey, outstanding.
How are you?
I am absolutely superb. Thank you ever so much for calling in. Don't know if you happened to hear earlier, I was speaking to Dan Butcher, the High Plains Pundit, and the reason that I wanted to have you on is because I wanted to introduce you to everybody here in SHR Media, in the SHR Media Network. Because the media network is changing, SHR is changing July 2nd, July 3rd. There's a whole bunch of new stuff going on. I haven't spoken to you yet. But I want people to get familiar with you, and I wanted to speak to you tonight about your background, and then I have some other things that I'd like to chat with you about that have to do with finances and budget and perhaps just a bit of the U.S. government. Before we go there, though, when I speak to somebody for the first time here in the saloon, I like to have them chat with me about their background and whatnot. So I have to ask you, you're a conservative. You're a black conservative. How did you find your way over to conservatism? I have my story. I'm sure you have a story. I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so I think it started, I trace it back to having to work 2 jobs during undergrad and watching all the kids who did not have to work at all, like party and have a good time, as I was dragging my tired self back to my apartment every night. And I mean, watching them get their food paid for, their shelter, their book, everything paid for. And meanwhile, you know, my parents, who were middle class, made too much money for me to get any kind of assistance. So I trace it back to way back then, but didn't know that that's what it was. And then I've always been a spiritual person. My Christian walk has had many forms, I guess you could say.
Okay.
But I've also had conservative principles, spiritually speaking. So if you morph the two of those together, I guess you end up with a Christian conservative eventually once you add politics.
Now, you mentioned being an undergraduate. Can you tell us a little bit about, obviously, you're a rather educated individual. Can you tell us what your background is and what you did in college and university?
Sure. I have an undergraduate degree in business administration. I have a master's in public administration. I am in my 3rd year of my doctoral studies. I am on a break right now because of this media thing has kind of taken over my life. But but I will be getting back to it shortly. But I did take a break from my PhD recently. But I'm in the 3rd year of my PhD studies, and that's in in public a hybrid of business administration with a specialization in public administration. Is my educational background.
So sooner rather than later, we're going to have to call you Doctor.
No, you really aren't. I'm going to tell you, my biggest it'll be Melanie Collette.
We should call you Doctor.
I just envision me in this restaurant or on a plane or something like that, and someone's like choking or having a stroke or some kind of heart attack, and someone says, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And and they look around and they say, "Oh wait, Dr. Collette is here."
Yes,
and
there she is.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I just read a lot of books." So, I don't see Dr. Collette on the horizon, and I'm seeing more of a Melanie Collette, PhD. I've told my friends along the way to please smack me if I even remotely become obnoxious after I get my doctorate, because I can't stand obnoxious PhDs. I just can't.
Well, that's sad. I was looking forward to well, maybe I'll still call you doctor. Anyway, on your show, you're on Spreaker, you're on a whole bunch of places. We'll get to that in just a moment. But it says, regarding your show, Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Guests' interviews include entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their field. Melanie has been an educator for many years. Courses she teaches, now this is an interesting point because I'm going to ask you about this, include financial literacy, accounting, sports marketing, and computer applications. She is currently an adjunct professor at Rowan University. So you're an instructor as well. What?
Yes.
Holy moly.
Yes.
Okay, Melanie, what is it that you don't do? Because all right, because clearly I think if there's one label that we can put on you, it's underachiever.
Definitely. I don't have a social life, so there you go. That's what I don't. Obviously, I don't have a social life, but and I write too. That's not even on there because some of that's relatively new. I gotta update, and my political stuff's not on there either.
Okay, well here's the part where one of the reasons for getting you on tonight is I wanted to make sure that I give you an opportunity to promote yourself as well, because people need to know about you and what it is that you offer. So can you tell the folks where you can be heard, where you can be read, social media, books, articles, anything like that? Everybody wants to hear where you can be heard and found.
Okay, well, I can be found on SHR Media, of course, and High Plains Pundit, talk radio and TV. Now, and that's on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10:05 Eastern Standard Time, at 9:05 Central Time, and 7:05 Pacific Time. Now, it seems that people would rather see me than hear me. I'm assuming that they're listening to me when they see me on High Plains Pundit television. I'm just going to assume that they're listening to all the big words that I'm saying, because my numbers seem to be a lot higher on TV than they are on the radio. I don't know what's up with that, but I'm going to assume that they're listening to all of these, the very high tech, intricate, complex financial concepts that we're discussing on my show. That's what I'm going with. But that's where I can be heard. I also write for the Horn News. I'm a contributing writer.
Okay.
I am working on my first contribution to Politichick, which I am a contributing writer for as well. It should rock everyone's world, I think, just a little bit. I'm hoping. So it'll be controversial. More death threats coming my way, I'm sure.
Now, the other question that I have for you is, okay, you indicated that's kind of how you tended to be a conservative individual, but what was it that particularly motivated you to get into the financial aspect of business, or of business at all, for that matter? What intrigued you about that?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I started with a business degree in the first place. So when I took a break from school and I decided to go back, it was like natural to just go ahead and finish the business degree. I always liked technology, and in order to teach technology, you, believe it or not, this is how messed up our public school system. I'm laughing. I'm looking in the chat room and I'm laughing at my friends in the chat. But you need a business degree and business teaching certification to teach business technology, which is what everything that I taught fell under, believe it or not, financial lit, accounting,
Okay.
computer application. Yeah. So that's what kind of got me started. The public administration piece came in because I got interested in education policy, and I wanted to understand public policy a bit more and how they spent their money. I understood how private money was spent and private budgeting and things like that, but I wanted to understand how public financing was done, and because I worked in a private school, and I didn't like the disparities between private schools and public schools, and I wanted to find out, I wanted to work on education policy and find out how I could help bridge the gap, so to speak. And I was very naive back then.
Well, hey, weren't we all?
Yeah, so that's how I got there.
In terms of financial things, and I'd like to get into some of the people that you've had on your show, but in terms of financial aspects, is there one particular thing that is sort of your favorite topic to talk about, or that you think people really need to know about?
My favorite thing to talk about is public spending, public money, only because people don't know. And how it relates to their everyday lives. And that's why the theme for my show, it seems like it's broad, but it's purposely. That's why it says that I discuss kitchen table, global, and domestic financial topics. And also I have a feature called 5 Minutes of Personal Finance at the end of every show. But my favorite thing to talk about is how these public dollars, how all these things that people gloss over really affect your everyday life, because I think that a lot of people just listen to the sound bites and don't understand what it means for them. So for me, it's another form of teaching and connecting those dots for my listeners.
You've had some really incredible guests on your show, and I'd like to ask you about some of the people that you've had on, but if I'm not mistaken, you have had Fox News' Ebony Williams on your show as well, have you not?
Yeah, and it's an amazing, if you have a minute for me to tell the story about how that happened, it was incredible.
Oh, please,
you
bet.
Talk about divine timing and just being just blessed. I was at the inauguration week. I went to, 3-4 inauguration galas that week. So
okay.
That night, I made the most of it. That night was the New Jersey, the NJGOP gala. I almost didn't go because I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted. So, but I decided to go anyway. So I go, and it's crowded where everybody is. So I go up to the adult beverage establishment upstairs.
Okay.
Where it's kind of, everybody's kind of chilling at the bar. It seems kind of fun. So I'm hanging out, and lo and behold, Ebony Williams sits down next to me. I kid you not. So
cool.
I'm not kidding. So I look at her and do what every dumb fan does, and says, "You're Ebony Williams." And she's absolutely gorgeous and completely down to earth. And so we talked for nearly an hour or so, and she asked me, she said, "Let me ask you something. Are you a sister in Christ?" Is what she says to me.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Absolutely, I am." And she said, "How would you like me to do your show?" Now, this is February. My show started in January. So, no, this is January. So this is the inauguration week. So this is the first week of January. My show had just started, literally. Had just started. Her appearance wasn't until February. But literally my show had just started that week. Okay? So she says, "How would you like me to do your show?" She's like, "I usually don't do these really that much anymore, but I'd love to help you out." Gives me her personal cell, her personal email address.
Wow.
And I honestly am thinking, she's not going to reply. She's not really going to really,
Yeah. Yeah.
She's just being nice because she just met this, this poor struggling chick. You know what I mean? So, sure enough, she's been on my show twice.
That's an incredible grab, so to speak. But it's all about how you know, who you know, how you meet them, And somebody was smiling down upon you, I'd say, at that particular time.
Listen, I can only attribute that to God, because I will tell you, a week before that, as you all probably know, I used to be on the Exceptional Conservative Network, and
right.
Just a week before, Ken and I were discussing Kim McClinton, who I'm grateful for giving me my break. Said to me, I want you to be the next Ebony Williams, the next Harris Faulkner. But he specifically said, we had specifically talked about Ebony Williams not a week before. And she sits down next to me at a bar randomly, Inauguration Week. And if you know anything about Inauguration Week, there are a billion parties all over D.C. Seriously, all over D.C. There's a billion parties going on. So for me to end up sitting next to her,
yep,
at a bar in D.C., I can't attribute to anything but God.
I would absolutely agree. Okay, besides Ebony Williams, I know you've had an absolute host of people on your show. Who are some of the folks that you've had besides her?
I've had Colonel Manus. I've had Colonel Rob Manus. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's absolutely fantastic, an American hero, really. I've had Albert Guillory, Senator Albert Guillory. He is
I'd love to talk to him.
I've had him on my show a couple of times. He's a senator who famously left the Democrat plantation in 2013 and became a Republican. Love him. Senator Ted Harvey I've had on the show, who's another one I just love him to pieces. He's just fantastic. I've had a number of very famous economists from the Mises Institute, which is this institute of economists that do all kinds of fabulous work. I've had economist Didier Sornet from Switzerland, who famously predicted the 2008 crash, market crash. And what he does is he predicts. What he does as a hobby. This is how smart this guy is. What he does as a hobby is predict disasters, and one of the disasters that he predicted, him and his team, that's what they do. He's a professor over in Switzerland and an economist. But as a hobby, he has this crisis management. He does crisis management research, and they have developed a formula to predict crises. And he predicted the 2008 crash, and actually emailed and talked to Greenspan about it, the whole nine. So I've been blessed to be such a newbie, have some really great guests, and just fantastic conversations. It's just very exciting for me because if you have not gathered, I am a super nerd.
Well, you may be a nerd, but you're one of the most highly educated nerds that I can possibly think of. Now, for all the people also that I speak to the first time, because I'd like to, well, let me ask you this. I won't just assume. Let me ask you, would it be possible that we could have you back in the saloon sometime in the not too terribly distant future?
Absolutely. I love the saloon. Now, I have to admit I needed a little nappy poo.
Okay. Well, that's okay. That's another thing. You are such a trooper because you're on the East Coast, and it's like after midnight now. So, number one, God bless you. Thank you very much for agreeing to be here because in terms of nappy buys, oh, yeah, it's after midnight back there. So thank you ever so kindly for that.
Thank you for having me. But I got sleepy around 10, and I was like, oh, no. So I took an hour nap, so I'd be wired for sound.
Thank you. Thank you ever so kindly. When I have people for the first time basically in the saloon, I always ask them what I consider to be a really important question that I find results in answers that just really enlighten me, and that's this. And obviously I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it. What would you consider to have been some of the real pivotal points in your life where perhaps your life is going in one particular direction and something came up and it was a massive, either a directional change or a paradigm shift or a thought shift or a philosophy shift? For me, for example, one was when I decided to go into law enforcement and how it was that I got there. Another one was what were the motivating factors for me to become a conservative? Because, oh my, in the 60s and the 70s, I was a real dyed-in-the-wool leftist. And then there was another situation that I got into, a critical incident in a shooting. That changed my perspective on a lot of things. So those were clearly my pivotal points where I was going in one particular direction, just fat and happy. And life came up and slapped me right in the face, and I came to all sorts of various epiphanies. Now, in terms of you, were there any real what you would consider pivotal points in your life?
To be honest, most recently, and that is with the radio show and with me leaving teaching. I have never been a risk taker. Anyone who's known me for any amount of time knows that I'm not a risk taker at all. I had a nice, cushy public school teaching job.
Okay.
Now, it ate a little bit of my soul every time I went. The environment, I love to teach. Teaching's fantastic. Once I'm in the classroom and I'm with the kids and they're learning stuff, fantastic. It's the bureaucracy and the environment and just basically, working in the socialist regime. That's the problem. But so it took a little bit of my soul every day. And what happened this year to me this year, I never, ever, ever thought about being in the media at all. At one point I thought I would be an actress, but that's for another show. But never the media per se. But I had a lawsuit that settled in record time. It settled in a year, and I kept being prodded. Last summer I said, you need to not go back to your teaching job. I kept hearing and thinking and feeling, you need to not go back to your teaching job.
Okay.
But my sensible, practical side said, but you need to eat.
Yes.
You better go back to your teaching job because you don't have a plan B. Well, I will tell you, my lawsuit settled. My lawsuit settled, and Ken offered me the radio show in like a 2-week span. And I felt like it was God finally saying to me, Melanie, you need to leave your public teaching job. It's time to go. You're done here. It's time for you to move. It's time for you to do something else. It's time for you to teach in a different way. And so it taught me a lot, and it has taught me a lot in a spiritual sense, mostly in a spiritual sense, just about listening and reliance, and that reliance on God, and listening when He is clearly trying to speak to me.
Okay.
And taking risks, which is not something that I've ever done. And it's been such a blessing.
Were there any other pivotal points in your life other than that, and that's obviously the most recent one that occurred, where you were just sort of floating along and something just incredible happened in your life that moved you in another direction?
It told me to do something differently. I don't think I'm ever just moving along. I'm always doing something, as reflected by the long list of things that I'm doing. But I'm trying to think if I've ever just been doing life, just floating along. I wish I could. Dave Miller in the chat just said, I'm not sure Melanie ever just floated along. And I know this sounds like a cop-out and lame, but I honestly don't think I ever have.
Okay,
I've always been working on something.
Or we could put it this way: was there a particular incident that you encountered where you were just given insight that you didn't have before, where you became enlightened in some fashion, maybe with a particular piece of honesty, clarity, something happened like that in your life?
Oh, okay. Now that's a deeper question.
There we go.
That's a deeper question. I will say in my political life that and it's just a full disclosure, one of the other things that I do, I'm first vice president of the New Jersey Federation of Republican Women here in New Jersey.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've been involved with that organization for a few years now. But I will say that politics is a lot uglier than I thought.
Okay.
It was. And if I revealed why I say that, the insight, the actual insights, I probably would mysteriously disappear tomorrow. But
uh-oh.
But what I will say is this, is that the higher you go, the dirtier it gets, and I don't care how good of a person you are. Okay? And maybe Donald Trump is the exception. I hope so. But there's a reason why the quote-unquote good guys don't run for higher office. There are reasons for that.
Wow. Now, that's a show in and of itself, just for that. Folks, we're listening to Melanie Collette. She is the host of a very own radio show, Money Talk with Melanie. We're going to take a break of about 3 or 4 minutes or so, and we're going to come back and continue talking to Melanie Collette, whom I thank ever so kindly for being here in the saloon tonight. Folks, come right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads radio show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Folks, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I have to say welcome back to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It is Thursday, June 29th, the year of our Lord 2017, and we are talking to Melanie Collette. She's the host and serious underachiever of anything and everything in life. She is going to pick up a doctorate in the not too terribly distant future. And I was reading in chat, Melanie, I was going to ask you a question, then I got delayed by chat. And darn me for not mentioning all the people in chat. There's Bigfoot in chat, Mary Brockman is in chat, Dan Butcher is in chat, Dave Milner is in chat, and Melanie Collette is also in chat. But in the chat room, Dave Milner wrote that you managed a McDonald's at the age of 16. That's a story, and I've got to hear it. Okay.
That happens in my store.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. You were addressing also a particular issue that I'm going to ask you about now, just before we went to the break. You mentioned politics, and you mentioned that you, the way you mentioned it, I have to ask you, are you thinking about anything political yourself?
I ran for office locally, which was just the first time you run for office and you're not particularly confident, it's very hard. So I think I would have been I lost, not terribly, but I lost to a doofus. And I did. The guy's a total fool. I hate to say that, but it's just true. So, but I don't know, like what I mentioned to you before about the higher up you go, the dirtier and uglier it is.
Right.
And that's why a lot of the really, really, really good people don't do it. I hope that I'm one of those really good people. But maybe Donald Trump has changed the game in that way. I was encouraged to run for something they call assembly here earlier this year. I said no. So, it's in the cards, but I'm not particularly interested at this point. Let's just put it that way. I want to do good. I want to be where I can do the most good. That's the thing. And I'm not sure that in politics particularly is where I can do the most good.
Now, maybe some other people know, but I do not. Obviously, you're on the East Coast. In what city or town are you?
I am in Cape May Courthouse, New Jersey, which has the awesome distinction of having the longest name in the country. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records, actually.
Wow, okay. Didn't see that coming.
Yes, that's where I live.
Now, we talked about your background. We talked about your financial wherewithal. Now, what I'd like to do is ask you, maybe tickle your brain about some things that have to do with the U.S. and the budget and things of a fiscal nature. One of the first things that I knew that I wanted to ask you, because of your background and your education, your training, your experience, what is it that you happen to think with regard to the push by leftists for, say, a $15 an hour living minimum wage?
Well, I think I think those people are not very smart and don't know how to count. And don't understand, economics, and that businesses are not in the business. They're not charities. They're businesses. That's the thing. And your job can be done by a robot, literally. So here's the thing, and I mentioned in the chat room that when I worked at McDonald's, I made $3.50 an hour. Now, little did I know, my mom tells the story all the time. I live in a very small town. My mom knew our manager at McDonald's, and my mom said to the managers, my sister worked there too, make sure you work their behinds really hard, because I want to make sure that they understand the importance of getting an education so that they don't want to work here the rest of their lives. And the managers obliged. Consequently, both my sister and I have college degrees. So that little plan on my mom's part works. But the thing is, the reason why you get paid so little, minimum wage is now $8-something an hour. It was $3.50 an hour when I worked at McDonald's. Is because that is commensurate with your experience, with your level of education. So you're literally getting paid with your worth, because we're in a capitalistic society, and that's what it's about. And I don't mean your spiritual worth. I don't mean your worth to God. I mean your economic worth. And leftists tend to conflate the two, and that's the problem. Those jobs are not designed to feed a family of four. That's why you don't get paid that much. That's the thing.
People are making that a particular issue, and you mentioned automation, for example, and as a result of that, we're seeing a lot more kiosks. Say the first thing that I think of, and I think the first thing that most people think of in terms of a minimum wage or a living wage, is the fast food industry. And it seems to me that these people are pushing for that at absolutely the wrong time in the history of America right now.
Absolutely. And not only are the fast food restaurants doing it, but you're like your Applebee's, which is not necessarily fast food, it's kind of,
Oh, yes, you're right. Yep.
But like your Applebee's and your Fridays and those places, they have it right on the counter.
Yep.
Where you can order your food. Like your waitress is basically like a food runner now. They're not really legitimate waitresses like they used to be. So and that's the other thing, like you clearly have no economic prowess whatsoever if you're demanding $15 an hour, and all for the wrong reasons. That's the other thing. Like, it's all about your feelings, and it's all about taking care of your family. When you are talking business, you have to provide economic value. You have to say that I'm worth to you economically $15 an hour, not because I need to feed my family. That's not an economic argument, and it's never going to work in a capitalist society.
No, and I'm reading chat here, and you say, the secret behind McDonald's. Okay.
McDonald's fries.
Fries. Okay, I don't know the secret about McDonald's fries. Can you reveal it?
Yes, they're coated in sugar. They're flash frozen in fructose.
Oh, really? Okay. Literally.
I'm not kidding.
Did not see that coming. Wow. Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to ask. I saw it in chat, and people were responding to it, and I thought, okay, well, all right, I need to know what the secret of McDonald's is. Now, we were talking, by the way, we're speaking to Melanie Collette, host of her own radio show on the SHR Media Network, Money Talk with Melanie. And we were speaking about the minimum wage, and if we're going to go there, one of the other things I was thinking is, I'll wager you probably have some thoughts and opinions that regarding the movement that's beginning in Europe right now, and perhaps with some economists in terms of, what do they call it, a universal wage?
Yeah, I think, isn't it Mark Zuckerberg who came up with that foolishness?
I think it's been around for a while, but yes, he most recently has been talking about it. And then, of course, people back in the EU have brought it back up again, particularly those in Sweden and Norway.
Yeah, it gets back to what I just said a moment ago about having economic value on your work. There needs to be an economic value. Universal wage indicates that basically just because you're living and breathing, you deserve to get paid some baseline salary. That is not, I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, your living and breathing is not an economic value. And that gets back to, you don't have anybody working behind the McDonald's counter, likely, that has a college degree. Because if they do, then their value is more than $8 an hour. There's a reason for that. That if you have a college degree, and here's the misnomer. Saying you have a college degree, it's like, oh, you're so much better than everybody else because you have a college degree. That says you're so much smarter. No, it doesn't.
You're right, it doesn't.
You're not. That has nothing to do with being smart. In fact, part of the reason why I got my master's is because I met it on some people that had master's degrees, and I thought it cannot possibly be that hard. That's just a fact. But seriously, getting your degree is about things like being on time to class, discipline, what's the word? Wherewithal, things like that, things that you need in order to function in a good job, in a job with greater responsibility. That's what your college degree says, is that you have stick-to-itiveness, okay, and that you can conquer different personalities of dumb professors that you have to deal with along the way. So, what your college degrees bring to you have a lot more to do with skills that you learn than what you actually read in your book. And that's what people don't get, and that's why people who have college degrees get paid more money. It has very little to do with your actual knowledge. I guarantee you many people who have college degrees will tell you if they had to take their final exams today right now, that they took in order to get out of college, they probably would not pass.
Talking to you is absolutely refreshing. It is literally like turning your pillow upside down and burying your face in the cool side of your pillow. It's great to have someone be so absolutely frank about the financial world. Now, I'm going to ask you a couple of more questions. We've got, I think we got about 10, 12 minutes or so. There's another article that just came out from CNSnews.com. And the headline is this. It says, CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, income taxes up 9.5% next year, but debt climbs more than $1 trillion. And they say this, unless current tax laws are changed, federal individual income tax collections will increase by 9.5% in fiscal year 2018, which begins on October 1st, according to data released today by the Congressional Budget Office. So, with that in mind, do you have any particular thoughts with regard to current tax laws and or tax breaks, etc., that the Trump administration is considering?
I do. I can't believe that the CBO gave Donald Trump that incredible solid. That's just a little shocking. I will say that budgeting is something that the CBO is actually good at. I don't know who assigned them the task of predicting how programs are going to work out. Like, they really should just stick to budgeting because that's what they're good at. Mm-hmm. Honestly, but I do think that they just gave Donald Trump, from a political standpoint, a major push to put in place the tax cuts that he needs to do it. Now, that he wants to do. Now, here's the other thing. Even during his election, the numbers weren't adding up to me. From a financial, it wasn't adding up.
Okay.
Because a lot of it was conjecture. Meaning, okay, so if we, like, no real numbers. So if we do this, then it's just stimulate the economy, and therefore more money is going to come in this way. But we don't have any definite about exactly how much they're planning on cutting. Like, there's no budget yet. I mean, the budget that we did, the last budget that they did, had a lot of cuts in it, but also still had a lot of spending. So, I'm concerned. But that was really Barack Obama's budget that they were finishing. So I'm going to give him a little bit of leeway there. A little bit.
Okay. All right.
And say, hopefully with the next one, that's legitimately his, that is his budget, that they're going to make some major changes. But, the Congressional Budget Office is they didn't do everything that they wanted to do with this budget, because part of it was Barack Obama's budget. It was the budget that Barack Obama never passed, which a lot of people don't realize that, but that's what it was. But this next one is all his. So I'm hoping to see some big changes, but they've got to be huge and they've got to be drastic. That's the thing.
Here were some of the things that Trump was advocating, and I'd like your thoughts and opinions on them. One of the first was he was advocating eliminating most federal income tax deductions and loopholes for the very rich. Now, the Gallup poll found that 63% of American adults favored this. What's your thoughts about eliminating most federal tax deductions and loopholes?
I like that idea, especially in the upper, from a political standpoint, because frankly, it doesn't add up to that much money when you consider that the rich are who pay most of the taxes.
Correct.
So, you know what I'm saying? So that's political spend. It's fodder and it's political spend. So, I say do it. Fine, do it, but it's not going to add up to that much money. You understand what I'm saying? Because
yes.
because they pay most of the taxes. So, to get rid of it's pretending like rich people save all this money because of the loopholes. Well, not really.
No, not really. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because they're still paying the majority of the taxes. The way our tax structure is set up is so that they pay the vast majority of our taxes, and that people who don't make any money pay no taxes at all, and as a matter of fact, get a refund.
Yes.
I'm still trying to understand.
Yes.
The word refund, as I understand it, means that you paid money and you get money back from what you paid because you overpaid. But that's not how it works in our tax structure. It's not actually a refund. If you get an $8,000 tax return and you paid zero taxes, no, what you just got is $8,000 bonus check for nothing.
Free money. Woohoo.
Yes, exactly. And they never require people who say are not working or on public assistance or something like that who get a big tax return like that. They never require them to reinvest it in, I don't know, taking a class. I don't know.
Yeah, investing. Yeah, exactly. Reinvesting it in themselves, for example. Now, here's another proposal. Here's another proposal that he had. He wanted to simplify the federal tax code, and he wanted to reduce, I think there's 7 tax brackets right now, and he wanted to reduce them to 4. On its face, it sounds admirable. Is it feasible?
I wish it were feasible. I think, here's what I think. I think there are so many, hidden in that concept are all these jobs and departments and regulations and politicians on both sides of the aisle that have money invested in keeping the system the way it is.
Right.
So that's the part that people don't understand, including Donald Trump himself, I think. Like, he wants to drain the swamp, but I don't think that he quite gets. Maybe he's getting it now, but I don't think that he quite understood what he was saying when he was saying it, that he wanted to drain the swamp. I don't think he understood how deep the swamp was. And so when you talk about something like, reducing the tax brackets, well, look at all the industries that you're going to affect by simplifying the tax code. Do you think the lobbyists for those industries are going to just allow you to simplify the tax code drastically like that? I don't think so.
Oh, yeah. Enrolled agents, CPAs, ad nauseum. Exactly. It's an industry.
Exactly. And so, when we're talking about, making these kinds of policy changes, these are the things that people don't consider. They say, well, fine. All you do, pass a law, bill becomes a law, goes through goes to the House, goes to the Senate, president signs it. Awesome. Well, not really. There's a lot that goes on in between all of that happening. And for one, I'm sure, CPAs in America or wherever it is going to have something to say about that.
There are 2 other questions that I'd like to ask. We've got about maybe 4 more minutes left or so, right around in there. One of them involves what I wish, and I'm just sort of whistling past the graveyard with this one, but I'd be curious what you think. I believe fervently that Americans should be made to pay quarterlies just like businesses. Once Americans had to pay their quarterlies, there would be a tax revolution, the likes of which this nation and probably no nation on earth will ever have seen. Businesses must do it. Individuals don't. I would love to see something like that happen, because then the blinders would be ripped off the public.
That is so true, and I love it. But you know, a lot of small businesses, especially in America, I don't know what the stat is, something like 80% or something like that is small businesses. But most small businesses don't file as a business. They pay their taxes as individuals. So, I mean, you would have to vet that out. Yeah, most people pay as individuals. A lot of people don't. They do it as like their side hustle, and they take deductions for it. But they don't. A lot of small businesses are not registered as businesses. A lot of it is like, I have this small business, I file as an individual, and because this is my job. My small business is a job. My job is my small business that I own. They file as individuals. They don't file as a separate business entity. People who do that are pretty much big dogs. They're not the little small businesses don't. Most people pay as individuals, believe it or not.
Didn't see that coming. Didn't see that coming at all. Hey, one final question for you. Trump also indicated that he wanted to plan to try to eliminate the estate tax paid when somebody dies. Again, America says, woohoo, yes, we love it. Again, is that feasible?
I hope that it is. I think that it is. I think that it is from a logic standpoint, and because we're all, this is one situation where we are all kind of equal. And what I mean by that is we all die, right? We're all eventually leaving.
Oh, yes.
So, I think that everybody can relate on some level to wanting to leave something for their kids, no matter how small. Now, and having, no matter how small or big. Now, I know it doesn't, they say the argument that it's like some kind of, passing wealth on to one another and it's not fair is ridiculous. Part of the reason why people work so hard in their lifetime is so that they can give a gift to their kids.
Yes.
That's why they did it in the first place. And now all of a sudden you're saying, well, no, you can't do that. And who is the government to say that, especially in our country? That is not how our country works. That's not how our Constitution works. I think it's patently unconstitutional, frankly.
I would absolutely agree. Okay, we're going to have to jam here. I have to say, number one, thank you very, very much for coming in. I'd love to have you back on the show in the saloon. Tell people again to remind folks where you can be found and where you can be heard.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. Thanks, everybody in the chat. Money Talk with Melanie, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio and TV. Live on SHRmedia.com. You can see me, come chat, come listen. 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Central Time, and 7 a.m. Pacific Time.
Perfect. Money Talk with Melanie. You got to be there. Aloha. Melanie, thank you ever so kindly for being in here. Folks, unfortunately, it's time for old Zeppas to take off. And thank you for listening. And, Melanie, hope to have you back.
That's fucking fine. Thank you.
We'll meet again. Don't know when, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
this was a great night. This was a grand night. I got to speak to Dan Butcher, the High Plains Pundit. I got to speak to Melanie Collette of Money Talk with Melanie. It was a great show, and I had an absolute great time. Thank you ever so kindly for listening to me tonight in the saloon, right here on the SHR Media Network. You can find me on Twitter at bzepp, on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net, and I have to say thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, because you know what I'm going to be doing with them in less than an hour. So, folks, God bless. Take care. Be safe. Thanks for listening. Come back next Tuesday.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.